All right, great. I think we'll get started now, and folks can just join in as they arrive. My name is Wilson Sue. Thank you for taking the time to check out a PowerNotes webinar. And so the webinar will be broken up into about 3 phases. The first is where I'll just kind of talk about the company and myself and how PowerNotes came to be. Then the second part of the webinar, I will talk about the problems that we're trying to solve. Then we will go into a live demonstration of PowerNotes, and then finally we'll wrap up with just some high points and then questions. So just quickly, a little bit about myself. My name is Wilson Sue. Again, I'm the founder and CEO of PowerNotes. I started PowerNotes in the beginning of 2017. Started at first in the legal space, legal education space, primarily being used by law students. We started selling PowerNotes to law schools to assist in legal research. And we did this because, I just recently graduated from law school, not that recently, about 10 years ago. After working in the legal field for a while, I did a lot of research and writing. And had to create my own processes for tracking the research I was doing, which was primarily online, and was frustrated with a lot of those processes. And we'll talk about those specifically when we get into the problems that we're trying to solve. As for PowerNotes, so right now we're in about 30 law schools, and we have started to move into the undergraduate space at the end of the summer last year. So this was around August of 2017. We developed some features that I think were critical for the undergrad space, namely working on PDF, as well as built in some citation features I'll show you in a little bit. We're in a handful of undergraduate institutions, Cornell, North Carolina Central University, and we're in several community colleges in the Chicago area, which is where we're based. We're running pilots right now at Princeton, NYU, University of Tennessee, and about to start one at University of Pennsylvania and a couple other schools. So that's a little bit about what we're trying to do. What PowerNotes is a new kind of novel digital research workflow platform. And what we're trying to do with that platform is trying to improve source-based writing. So I think of them as research papers. In the legal context, they're considered legal briefs or memos, and different people call them different things based on the context of which they're presented. So essays, anything that's really source-based, and you need to do some research to gather the materials to support your paper. I have one person that says they can't hear anything. Hold on one second, I'll just ask if they can dial in. Can other people hear me?
Yeah, I had to dial in too.
Okay. Hold on, I'll post the dial in. Oh, some people hear me fine. I'm just going to quickly post the dial in number. All right, that should be able to get you in via phone, unless you might have your computer muted or something like that. But other people are apparently hearing me, so give folks a little time to get into the conference via phone. Let's see. So again, we're a new digital research workflow platform. really trying to improve kind of the end product being some sort of written work product that's source-based, so a research paper, a lot of times in the undergrad context. The way we're trying to do that is really trying to fill in the gaps that I see in the research and writing process. And this is largely in the digital space, in the digital environment. Personally, I found a lot of gaps in the process. And when we talk to a lot of students as well as librarians and writing instructors, people tend to cobble together applications to try to support or facilitate the research process in the digital space. I'm just going to quickly mute everyone. So if you are not speaking to me, please do mute your microphones because we are getting some background noise.
We're muted, right? I don't know.
I heard someone say we're muted, right?
We can't figure out how to mute it.
I can mute you from here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Hopefully I don't mute myself. All right. So I think I have everyone muted right now. Okay, going to the next slide. The top of the slide, I lay out basically an example process for research and writing in the digital space. And so this process isn't meant to be set in stone. Obviously, people can differ on the different stages of the process. It is meant to be iterative, not kind of linear as it's laid out here. But I wanted to provide this kind of process for illustration purposes for the next couple of slides. With this sort of process, a student or researcher in the beginning would come up with a topic or thesis, do some research. They might decide to change their topic or thesis, do some more research, go into writing, decide they need to do more research, go ahead and do that, and then go back to writing. So it's a dynamic process, and I want to start to focus on the right side first, which is the writing process. And when writing went digital, word processors were designed and built to facilitate these processes. And so with a word processor, you can do a first draft, you can edit and revise, you can cite sources, and you can get feedback, all built within the functions of a word processor. And so it works really well for that process because that's what it was designed for. Unfortunately, when digital research went digital, tools were not designed specifically to address that process. And so students, myself included, had to kind of build their own processes using a bunch of different applications that weren't designed specifically for that process, things like word processors, keeping browser tabs open, spreadsheets. All of those things led to kind of inefficient ways of doing things, caused me a lot of frustration, caused students a lot of frustration, and they're prone to error. They typically involve a lot of cutting and pasting, and you can easily lose track of things that way. They also lead to students skipping entire stages of the process, specifically organizing their research and creating an outline. I'll go into depth on that a little more later. But I do want to go into some of these stages, first starting with the reading and learning stage. When sources went online, students and researchers, myself included, had to do a lot more reading on a screen. And so my personal experience, I actually went to undergrad in the early 90s, and so the first kind of exposure I had to writing research papers was in the print world, and I find myself being much more of a better reader, and I understand things a lot more when I read things in print rather than on a screen, and a lot of people had that same experience. But that said, most of today's students, especially the younger students that have kind of grown up with reading most of their content online, do prefer to read that online. People tend not to print it out. It can be expensive as well as time-consuming. And it's probably not a good, like, long-term solution is printing everything out. And so, especially when I went to practice law after graduating law school, printing just became not practicable just because it was expensive, and I just didn't have time to print everything out. And so more and more I had to rely on reading on a screen, and there's studies that have shown that reading comprehension and retention decreases when reading online compared to in print for a number of reasons. One of the bigger reasons is just the number of distractions that are around in the digital space, and one of them is actually built into a lot of the processes that students use to capture their research. So when a student typically finds something they want to use online in their paper later on, they'll copy that material and then they'll go to another document, whether it be a Word doc or a Google doc, paste that material there, and then come back to the source. Now, having done that, they've distracted themselves, and so they've left the source document, and then they have to reorient themselves to that document when they arrive, when they return. And so if they wanted to then grab the URL, hold on one second, I'm going to mute this person real quick.
Great.
Once they return to that document, if they want to grab the URL so they can come back to it later, either for citation or further context, that's another distraction that they've just built for themselves. And so one of the things that we're trying to do with PowerNotes is really keep students focused on sources. A lot of writing instructors and librarians that I talk to kind of complain about how students a lot of times will read only sections of sources, the sections that their search engine provides for them, the highest concentration of keywords that they've found, and then not come back to it. So what we're trying to do is just keep them on that source and just try to minimize the chances for them to leave and not come back, because we do want them to read the entire source so they're not doing things like misquoting or not getting the overall context of the argument they're trying to make or they're trying to use to support their sources. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of students don't organize their research. That's because it's difficult to organize that research when they're using that copy and paste process. What they end up with at the end of the day with that process is a really long-running document of quotes of which they don't really know what to do with. And so instead of taking the time to cull that material, like take away all the things that are irrelevant, especially those things that they might have captured at the beginning when they didn't know a lot about their research topic, and then reorganizing the rest of their materials, it's just a daunting process with all of that material. They just start writing. And that can lead to a lot of stream of consciousness writing, when I talk to writing instructors, they get a lot of these days, and really just disorganized writing. The next slide here, I want to go more into that organization and specifically go into outlining. When we do surveys of students, this is actually the most difficult part of the research and writing process, really that organization and then that transition into writing. It's not just the most difficult, but it's also the least enjoyable for students. And so one of the things that we're trying to do with PowerNotes is build organization into the research process and give students an interface to reorganize as easily as possible so that they are in a much better position to start that first draft. And try to take out a large part of the frustration that students feel with writing these papers. Another thing that we're trying to do when we look at just the sheer volume of material out there, now that most of your sources have gone online, the search engines are very good at giving you a lot of options. So you can do a pretty quick search and get hundreds of articles. How do you deal with and manage all of that content? That's something that, for myself, I was able to handle in the beginning of school with my more simple research assignments. But then when my assignments became more complex and I had to use more and more sources, my process started to break down. And so we wanted a product out there that can kind of handle any number of sources. Finally, I'm going to talk about attribution, incorporating attribution into this process. Right now, I have citing sources all the way over on the right side of this chart. Not because I believe it belongs there, but because a lot of students think of it at the end of the process. And so they'll actually do all of their research, write their paper, incorporate all their sources, and at the very end, go back and try to find those sources for attribution. Unfortunately, a lot of students have a hard time finding all their sources, just because it's probably been a long time since they first read them and captured that material. And so a lot of times students will have to make a difficult decision of, hey, do I pull that source out or do I just use it without attribution? And that's when they can get into trouble with plagiarism. One of the things we're trying to do is, while the students do their research, we're capturing all of the material they need to do that attribution in the background without having them take an extra step when they should be doing it during the research process to pull that material up, because that's just another distraction that we want to avoid as well. So we're just really trying to prevent plagiarism before it happens rather than kind of catch people after the fact, like turn it in. All right, so I'm about to jump into the live demonstration, but what we're really trying to do with PowerNotes is take these steps and really unify them into a single workflow with a single product. Just to make the process more efficient, make it flow better, kind of eliminate the frustrations and put the student or researcher in the best position to write that we think we can. All right, any questions really quickly before as I jump over to the live demo? Oh, I would unmute everyone first. Or just chat me your question. That's probably easier.
Great. Okay.
Okay, I can.
Okay, great. Then, what's your name again? Anne. Okay, Anne. Thank you so much for your help, and I will give him a call.
All right, I will just leave it to chat then. Right now, what you're looking at is the Chrome browser, and PowerNotes is a Chrome extension. It sits on top of your browser and adds functionality to the Chrome browser. We started with Chrome because it's used by about 82% of college and grad students. We will be adding other browsers this summer, starting with Firefox. So that'll be the next browser that comes along. Eventually, we will add Safari and Edge. Probably not going to be supporting Internet Explorer because Microsoft's not even going to be supporting Internet Explorer anymore. So when you look at, when you have PowerNotes enabled, you'll see this sidebar over here, which I've kind of titled at the top with How a Bill Becomes Law. So we'll do some research on how a bill becomes law during this demo. And I'll show you more about the sidebar in a little bit once I start to capture some information. Safari is going to be after Chrome and Firefox. Firefox is going to be the next one just because they are actually building in technology to allow Firefox users to install Chrome extensions. Safari is built on a slightly different technology, but it will be supported. All right, and so I'm going to minimize the sidebar for now, just to get it out of my way. And what I'm going to do here is what I would do as a student. So if I was a student, I would find something that I found interesting, and then I would highlight it and want to copy and paste it into another document. Again, to me, that's a distraction that we're trying to eliminate. So when you do that with PowerNotes, when you highlight something, this box pops up. And so this box is titled How a Bill Becomes Law, so you know that's the project that you're in. And has some very generic topics that we've kind of pre-populated. So like topic 1, topic 2, most students tend to use background, so we're going to be including background shortly as just a generic topic. And we do this, create these generic topics because we don't know what the student's going to be writing their paper on, and to a large extent, students, when they're starting a research project, don't know a lot about their research area, and so they don't necessarily know what kind of topics they want to start thinking about and find important in that research area. We do want to make it very flexible to and very easy to add and manipulate their topics as their knowledge grows, and I'll show you how we do that in a little bit. But first, I'm going to put this into background, and as soon as I do that, the highlighted material becomes highlighted in yellow, and an annotation box appears and prompts me to annotate it. So I'm going to say more about this later. And then once I've done that, I'm going to open up the sidebar here again. And so what you'll see in the sidebar is the material that I highlighted saved in quotation marks here. And so you know it's not yours. The notes that you took in a separate notes box. And what we've done is we've automatically grabbed a URL, the URL for this page. So the student doesn't have to do it and they can always get back to this page. And we filed all of that into the category they chose, which is background. And so this kind of unit, which is the combination of your notes, the highlight, and the URL, is what I'll call a snippet for later discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and capture a little more material. I'm going to put this into topic 2. I'm going to paraphrase this later. And you'll see it's populated here in the sidebar now. And you can easily change any of these topic names. I'm going to call this House of Representatives. And one thing that you'll also notice is that there's some icons down here. So if I just wanted to copy and paste something, I can just hit copy. If I wanted to add a topic, so say I'm reading some more material, I'm finding, oh, Senate's going to be important in how a bill becomes law, I can create that new topic on the fly, add that material to the Senate topic that I just created. Again, take my notes, and it will have created that topic in the sidebar kind of dynamically as you research. And so one of the things we're trying to do is encourage the student to organize and think about the material that they're grabbing as they do their research. And we understand that in the beginning, they might not know a lot, but as they do more research and learn more, that will become, that knowledge will grow, and the outline that we're creating in the background should grow with them. And that's what we're trying to do. So another couple things that I'll point out that are fairly subtle are things to try to prevent distraction, really keep users focused on the source. So as soon as I highlight something, this box pops up in a very specific place, and it's exactly where your eyes left off. And we do that because we do want to focus the user on the material while allowing them to capture the material they need to capture as efficiently as possible with as little distraction as possible. And we're also building in two kind of anchors, we call them mental anchors, that are written about as some of the best practices when reading in the digital environment by some studies that we've actually cited in a blog post that I will send to everyone at the end of this webinar. So I'm going to take some notes here. We intentionally want to focus them on that location so they're not going to a different application or going to the upper right part of the screen, which is something that like a OneNote or an Evernote would prompt them to do. Oh yeah, so it works on, I got a question here, how does the URL population work with items that are not from the free web, such as databases, electronic journals? I'll actually show you that in a little bit. We'll go to a journal, but it works the same way. Things like ProQuest and EBSCO, we actually work with those companies to make sure we work on their site because they do have kind of dynamic URLs. We make sure we're always grabbing the permanent link for PDF-driven documents. I'll show you that in a second. We're doing the same sort of thing. We're grabbing permanent links whenever they're available. But most of those PDF-driven ones have stable links, but that's another story. There probably is a little bit of tweaking that needs to be done every time we onboard a school, and that's to handle their proxy server, and every school kind of has a little different proxy configuration. And so there's probably a couple days that will take at the beginning of any sort of relationship just to make sure all their databases work smoothly. Certain databases should work right out of the gate, like a JSTOR, like EBSCO, ProQuest, but there will be some databases that will require some tweaking. You can also use PowerNotes on any online PDF as well as an offline PDF. So any PDF that you have on your computer, as long as you open it in your browser, you'll be able to use the PowerNotes interface to gather material. And the links back to the source for those documents will always be will always work unless you move that document, because we do save the path for that document. But if you move it, we don't know what the path is anymore. All right, I'm going to move into a couple different types of sources just to show you some additional features. I'm going to go to a news article here, so away from something kind of generic like a Wikipedia. I'm going to highlight some material. Oh, hold on. My internet is being wonky here. All right. So as soon as the internet catches up, when I highlight material on, this is the Atlantic, same sort of interface. I'm going to add a topic called current events. Save it. Drop it in current events. Take my notes. You'll notice there is a grayed out quotation icon here, and this is to show you that what we're also grabbing in the background, in addition to the URL, we're also grabbing whatever metadata the source has that can be used to create a citation. When I click on this, what you'll see is for this particular article on the Atlantic, it has a good amount of metadata. It doesn't have everything, and we always encourage students, we have a disclaimer here to make sure they check the metadata because it can be either incomplete or incorrect. And I'll see that we have everything except for the month, the date of publication. I'm going to just type that in. You can copy and paste it if you want to. And I can apply it to everything on this page. So I only have to do this once per page. And I click Save to Sources. And now what you'll see is when I go and look at that source, the quotation mark is now green. And so what will happen now is anytime I take another highlight on this page, the icon is already green because I've already checked the citation information. It's already saved the thing that I added. So I, again, only have to do that once. Now, like if I went and looked at the Wikipedia stuff that I captured, again, it's incomplete. It's grayed out because I didn't click Save to Sources, but you'd have to fill in whatever you need to fill in to cite a Wikipedia article to make sure, and then click Save to Sources for that icon to turn green. All right, I'm going to go to a JSTOR article now. So this is a subscription database that I get through my alma mater. And I'm going to go to this PDF. It's the same exact interface. The only difference being that we handle the citations a little differently. I'm going to add something called journals. And we save the citations differently because the students actually treat these sites a little differently from a citation perspective. They tend to give you fully formatted citations. And they'll take that citation and copy and paste it into a certain place wherever they're using or storing that material. And so we give them a field to do that as well, where I'm going to go ahead and do the exact same thing, grab the citation, and grab the MLA, paste it into here, save the sources. So again, I only have to do that once. And the citation I already captured is already there. I'm going to jump to, I'll go to the Senate website. Here, I'm just going to capture a little more material just to illustrate something for you in a little bit. Right, on an online database right now it is. It is a little more manual to capture the citation, but it's not any more manual than what students currently do. In fact, a little easier because they only have to do it once, and it tracks it with each highlight they make on a particular article. One thing that we are working on right now is we're working with, EBSCO and ProQuest and JSTOR and these providers to build in some more integrations. We're going to grab that citation automatically as soon as the student selects which citation format that they're using. Right now we're citation format agnostic, and I'll show you what students can do with that citation information in a little bit. But and we're never going to actually do our own citation formatting. We're always going to rely on third parties, either the database provider or the established reference management tools out there to do our citation formatting for us. But we will be working to integrate formatted citations into that process that I just showed you with like the JSTORs and the EBSCOs. All right, so every project has something we call the project outline. So all of this material you see in the sidebar, really what we're really doing in the background is creating an outline, or outline where students have organized their research material into categories. And all of that material is also on a separate page called the project outline. And this is what the project outline looks like. Here you can do things like you can change the name of your project. You can edit any of your notes on your projects. You can also change topic names. All of the material is here. These links are live, so you can always go back to the sources. You can change your notes, all of the things you'd expect to be able to do. The thing that we want students really to do here is to assess and reorganize their research. And so they can go through and easily delete things that are no longer relevant. They can reorganize things simply by dragging and dropping, moving things around. And we've kind of mimicked this user interface based on how a lot of the old school people used to organize their research, which is write their, each of the sources on material on note cards and just move them around on your floor. And so they can easily just move things around in their project outline to reorganize it, or if they need to move it a longer distance, there is a menu that allows them to do that. So here, again, they're reassessing their research. They're deciding, okay, I need to go back and find more on this. They go do that research, they come back, they reassess. Meant to be an iterative process. Also here is a topic menu. Can a snippet belong to more than one topic? We will have the ability to copy snippets, but right now, students they just highlight, they can highlight the same thing more than once, so that's how they create snippets that belong to more than one topic. But we will be building in features to allow them to copy snippets, duplicate them, and also move them to different projects as well. All right, so this view is the topic manager, and here, in addition to adding topics and changing project topic names, you can also change the color of topics. But really here, you can reorganize entire sections of your paper by moving your topics around just by dragging and dropping them. And so everything in the background is moved with it. But really what we want students to do is, in that topic management window, and this is something we worked on with writing instructors, is to start to transform this kind of what I would call a more topical outline into a more structural or conceptual outline that's actually following the structure of your paper. And so students will go through a couple progressions in PowerNotes. First, they'll start out with their generic topics because they don't know a lot about what they're researching. Then they'll kind of find out the important areas that they're researching. They'll create what we have typically, what looks like here, with just areas, general areas that are going to be important for their paper, but this doesn't necessarily reflect how their paper is going to flow. So it doesn't actually take them to that next step of getting into writing easier. So what we want them to do next is, and again, this is something we developed with folks actually at USC, start to create additional topics. Once you know enough that you know how your paper is going to be structured, at least initially, you can start creating a different set of topics, and it'll just add them to the bottom of your topic list. I'm going to do a very generic version here, but I think you'll get the point. All right, so I've added several topics to the bottom of my list here, of my topic list, and now I'm going to start reorienting or taking the kind of source materials that are supporting, right, kind of like general topic areas right now, and to move them into supporting specific areas of my paper. move this into intro. I'm going to move this into my first argument. And I'm going to do it really quickly here. Obviously, a student would take a little more time to think about this. Background's going to support my intro. And so now what I've done here, what I have left is what the beginnings of how my paper is going to be structured and what sources are going to support what sections of my paper. And I can always reorganize, move things around. I can always add notes. But really what we want students to do here is then start to think about, okay, I really need more material to support this section of my paper. I'm going to go out and do that research now. And when they go out and do that research, all of their topics will be updated. So they can drop things directly into either your new sections of your paper or your older topics so you can refile them later. That's a lot of kind of what we want students to do more to, and it's only one way to do it. There's actually other ways that instructors have come up with to have students better orient their research to support their paper writing. But this is one that we like in particular. We actually wrote a blog post on it, so I can also share that with you once this webinar is over. When the student is ready to write, so they've gone through some iterations of doing research. When they're ready to write, they can click here and download all of their materials into a Word document. They can also download their sources into an RIS file, which is something they can import into like a Zotero or a RefWorks or EasyBib. Something we're going to be doing in the future is we're actually working with EasyBib and RefWorks to build out direct exports into those tools so that you don't have to go through the RIS intermediary. So I'm going to download my Word document. And so these Word documents, we put a lot of white space into it on purpose, and it's so that students can write around it. On Microsoft. One thing that we actually did not anticipate is how much instructors, writing instructors, wanted to use this outline or outline download. And they wanted to use it because a lot of writing instructors assign an interim outline before the paper is due so that they can give feedback before they get the final product. The downside of doing that is that, for instructors to give that assignment is that if they have 13 students, a lot of times they'll get 13 different formats of outline. And so they'll take some time to just understand what they're looking at. They like PowerNotes because A, it's easy for the students to generate. B, it's in a standard format that they can just dig into the substance immediately. And start giving them feedback. So here you'll see it's organized by topic. So it's structured according to how the students structured their thought process, and it has the quotes as well as the links back to the sources. The links are live, and so unless the link is linking back to something on the student's hard drive, it will take them to the source page. As well as it has all their notes. So one of the things that professors like to do with PowerNotes is they tell their students, hey, whenever you're going to paraphrase or summarize something, just indicate that in the notes box. Say paraphrase to and then paraphrase it so they can give them direct feedback on those types of skills. All right, I got a question here on the chat. There are some similarities between the research process and posts in EasyBib. I'm not familiar with Post-its in EasyBib. I've never used it. I only used EasyBib for just copy and pasting materials or putting URLs and getting citations back. I'll do some research in that, and I'll even ask the EasyBib folks to show me what that's meant to do. All right, so this is the outline. In fact, this has become so popular with professors. What we're doing for the fall, actually, is just giving them access to this view. And so we can just skip the Microsoft Word intermediary, give professors access to this view, and they can then, they won't be able to change any of the material that the student has, so they won't be able to delete anything or change their notes or anything like that. But they will be able to comment down at the snippet level if they wanted to. And they'll be able to sort this material in different ways. For instance, they'll be able to sort by source, so they can see just quickly all the sources that the student's using for information literacy purposes. They'll be able to sort by date to see where the students started their research and kind of how they ended up where they ended up. And we're always asking librarians and writing instructors for feedback, because we do want to kind of build an instructor view or an instructor experience that matches what they want to accomplish. And so that'll be something that we're going to put the first version out in fall, and then we're going to get feedback to see, hey, is this as useful to you as you want it to be, or do you think if we tweak this or that, it can be that much more useful? So one of the things that you're going to get with PowerNotes is we're going to be very responsive to kind of your needs and your students' needs when using products like this. For instance, when we do have this direct export to a reference manager, we're also going to be able to allow schools to turn it on or off based on their pedagogical goals. So there are certain schools that we are doing pilots in that don't want to have that feature available to their students. So we're just going to be able to turn that off. So they do have to do, at least initially, more manual kind of muddling through citations so that they do learn that process to the extent that the schools, that the instructors care about that. There are certain schools that want it in, so we'll let them have it in. That is most of the live demonstration right now. I'm going to jump quickly back to the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to chat them in. But I'm just going to quickly wrap up on kind of the high points of what we're trying to do. So again, what we're trying to do is really improve research papers by a couple different things. First, hitting the front end and trying to improve that reading comprehension while reading on a screen. Really trying to foster deep reading, keeping users focused on the source and never leaving it, while also eliminating kind of those administrative tasks of like going and grabbing that URL or copying and pasting, author and publication date, so they can get citation information later. And so they don't have to do it later. They're going to grab it at the time that they did the research. The next thing is really trying to put the student in the best position to write. So we're doing a couple of things. We're embedding organization. So nothing is hopefully going to come into PowerNotes disorganized. And then giving them tools to easily reorganize that material and reorganize it in a way, and giving them some guidance on how to reorganize it in a way that more easily transitions them into writing. And with blog posts and stuff like that, as well as other instructor support materials on our blog, and I'll send that to everyone after the webinar as well, instructors can learn how to support that. We actually have a whole section on our blog for lesson plans that instructors have come up with when using PowerNotes. All right, and finally is really trying to give instructors more visibility into the research process, so they can give earlier and more specific feedback throughout various stages of the research process, and really trying to deter bad habits like procrastination or ghostwriting by having kind of like a map of how the student's research has progressed over time. So it's not all at the end, which can lead to either bad papers or suspicion about them not doing their own work. I see a question here. Yeah, so that's a great question. Can PowerNotes projects be shared? That will come with the instructor support in the fall. So they will be able to be shared in the fall. Right now, we do have a lot of students collaborating in PowerNotes, but the students themselves hacked it. And so what happens right now is, and it started in law school where students have a shared moot court competition, and so they'll team up and write a combined brief. And so you have 2 or 3 students working on the same sort of outline. And what they did is, what they found out is that PowerNotes works seamlessly if you just use the same credentials and you just sign into the same account and do the research. Everything will go into the outline as if one person was doing it. And so once we found out about that, we started giving out creating working with MOOC Corp boards to create a set of accounts that are specifically for them to share, so they don't have to share their credentials. And they would use this kind of shared account to do their collaborative projects. But we are going to build in more formal versions of sharing and collaboration over time. Sharing will come in the fall, collaboration will come a little later than that. So if students, we have a lot of students that pay for PowerNotes themselves, so it's a freemium model where an institution can buy it for their entire student body, or an individual can buy it for themselves. If an individual signs up, they get one project for free. And if they want more than one project, they can buy premium access for $5 a month or $50 a year. Finally, that's pretty much all for the presentation. Oh, I have one more question here. Can you say a little more about how it helps deal with the distractions being online? So one of the distractions, I wouldn't call it about being online. I would say one of the distractions inherent to research itself, at least the current process of research, is we eliminate the copying and pasting into another document. So every time you go into that other document, that's a distraction. Because you just left the source and you have to come back to the source to continue reading. We kind of eliminate that altogether while still allowing students to capture that source material. We also keep the student focused on their reading spot. So they're going to capture that material, but their eyes are never going to leave the area where they're reading. So as soon as they use PowerNotes to grab that material, they're going to continue reading. And we want to minimize that distraction that way. Third thing is, not necessarily distraction related, but related to kind of the best practices in reading online, is trying to build mental anchors to the material that they're reading. For instance, when I read in print, for instance, there's a lot of the mental anchors you build are things that help you remember what you're reading online or reading in print. And for me, those are things that are physical in nature. You know, the feeling of the page, the relationship of the text to a picture, or top or bottom of the page, things that aren't necessarily there in the digital environment. And so, because you have continual scrolling and you don't have pages to a large extent. And so we're trying to build into the digital environment things like the categorization and the annotation that have been shown by studies to kind of help in that process. Students create accounts. Can they sync with multiple devices? Yeah, so I'll start with the accounts first. Yes, students create accounts right now. So students will they'll go to our website, they'll download and install the extension, and it'll walk them through creating an account. And when they create that account, if they use their school email address and the school is one of our partners, they'll just automatically get unlimited projects and get premium access right off the bat. If they didn't use their school email address for some reason, when they want to create another project, we'll actually prompt them to enter their school email address before they pay for it, because we want to make sure they're not paying for it if their school already pays for it. Finally, I'm going to go into the next question, which is, can it sync to multiple devices? It is a cloud app, so it does sync to multiple devices. We're actually, right now, the capturing material, so the Chrome extension is only available on desktop, but you can review all of your project outlines on any device anywhere. So you can do it on your phone, you can do it in Safari, you can do it in any browser, it doesn't really matter, it's on our site. Doesn't involve the extension. The extension and capturing material is, we're going to have mobile apps soon. That'll be by the end of this year, where students will be able to do research on, their phone or their iPad and have that sync across everything. Also, if schools install the extension on their computers in their labs, and the student signs in, they'll have all of their material there. So again, it's a cloud-based app, so they'll have access to it wherever the app is or the extension is installed, and they sign in. Another question I got here is, can you create snippets from multimedia sources, audio, video. Okay, so that is one of the next things that we're working on. We do eventually want to allow PowerNotes to capture anything. We're focused on text first because that's just what the majority of research is being done on, but we do understand that more and more material is in other formats, and we want to be able to capture and annotate that material in PowerNotes. And so that's something that we will be working on. Just so you know, something that we're actually working on in this view right here is the ability to, for a user to create just blank cards. So all of these cards that you see here are attached to a source that's somewhere else. We want students to be able to create blank cards so that they can either incorporate their own thoughts, like a thesis statement, topic sentence per paragraph, whatever it is, and also incorporate non-digital sources. So if there's a passage in a book you want to use, you can record that here, put in the citation information, and you can track it and move it around and reorganize it, just like any of these cards that you see here. That's probably the next feature that we're building. Having blank cards for students to use here. There you go. I just anticipate your next question because your prior question led me right into it. If folks are online or interested, I'll send everyone an email. But the next step typically is to set up a webinar with folks at your institution, likely other librarians, writing instructors, if you have educational technologists, and always students. A lot of people want to see if students will like it. We do pilots for larger schools. And so the smaller schools, we don't necessarily do pilots because we've lowered the price to a point where I don't think that needs to happen, but we can always discuss that. We can do limited pilots as well. So if there are any questions, feel free to chat them in. Otherwise, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to just quickly unmute everyone in case that's easier. Any questions? Great, thank you very much. And I will send out an email sometime today, and I will follow up on that. Great, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.